The year was 2164. Earth had been quiet for nearly 2 decades. No wars. No revolutions. No disasters too big to handle. Humanity had finally found something like balance. Not perfection, but survival with dignity. Climate repair had begun. Old wounds were being healed. The air was cleaner. The oceans were reclaiming their calm. People had started to believe, maybe for the first time in centuries, that the worst was behind them. And then the sky broke open. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. The first sign came from a research satellite in Jupiter's orbit. A strange gravitational anomaly had pulled its course slightly off path. Then another satellite. Then a ripple across spacetime that triggered every sensor humanity had above the stratosphere. Something was coming. For 2 weeks, the scientific world held its breath. The military scrambled to prepare. Space agencies shared data in a rare act of unity. And then, on the 3rd Sunday of March, the anomaly became visible. It was not a ship. It was a fleet. Hundreds of vessels, black as void and smooth as bone, slipped into orbit around the moon. No transmissions. No warnings. No demands. Only silence. Panic hit Earth's population like a plague. People screamed in churches. World leaders activated old protocols buried in digital vaults. Defense systems once shut down were suddenly rearmed. Humanity, so used to being alone, was now prey. The first attack was swift. A blast of energy vaporized the Chinese lunar base within seconds. No warning. Just light, then silence. Hours later, the Martian mining colony lost contact. Satellites were cut off. Every attempt at communication failed. And then they spoke. But not in words. Across every screen, in every language, came a single message burned into the feeds. You have been observed. You are found unworthy. Your fire will be extinguished. Then the killing began. Their ships hovered like gods. No engines. No trails. They pulsed with some dark technology that Earth scientists couldn't comprehend. Cities were not bombed. They were erased. A pulse of light and matter dissolved. People turned to ash standing still. Entire districts vanished in moments. But not all of Earth bowed. In the mountains of Peru, a guerrilla cell began firing back with stolen railguns. In the scorched remains of Tokyo, engineers turned satellites into weapons. In the frozen plains of Canada, survivors began building bunkers with labs and launch bays underneath. The fire of humanity didn't die. It grew. Among these scattered embers rose a name that would echo through history. Commander Elias Ward. A former orbital drop captain turned farmer, Elias had walked away from war after the AI rebellion of 2147. He had buried his armor in a field outside Colorado and swore to never pick up a rifle again. He was planting carrots when the sky caught fire. His wife and daughter died in the first strike on Denver. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just dug up his armor. The orbital remains of Earth's once glorious defense ring floated like shattered bones above the atmosphere, a grim reminder of humanity's broken shield. The alien fleet, the Virelli, had not merely attacked. They had erased. Cities turned to craters. Oceans boiled. Satellites became shooting stars. And yet, in the ashes of defeat, something primal stirred. In the old tunnels beneath Warsaw, once used during the Second World War, now powered by scavenged fusion cores and retrofitted tech, Captain Celine Rourke reviewed the holographic projections. A storm of red dots swarmed the planet's surface. Every dot was a Virelli forward base, a listening post, a breeding ship. Earth had become a parasite's nest. But they were not alone. They've begun digging into Yellowstone, said Dr. Ajay Mehta, the lead scientist for Echo Command. If they destabilize the caldera, we're looking at extinction-level consequences. They won't get that far, Rourke said coldly. Not before we make them bleed. The plan wasn't defense anymore. Defense had died with the moon base. Now it was vengeance. Strike teams were forming across continents, North America, Eurasia, the fragments of Africa. Ghost cities held human resistance like mold in the cracks. Underground trains ran again, not for passengers, but to transport plasma warheads and antimatter mines. Solen stepped into the war room where Commander Griggs waited, his one cybernetic eye scanning the briefing table. He had fought during first contact, lost half his unit, and gained a hunger for retribution. 2 minutes, he growled. Brief them. Rourke faced the strike teams, men and women in makeshift armor, breathing recycled air, each a veteran of lost families and fallen cities. We call ourselves Fire for a reason, she began. Because they think they've snuffed us out. But coals remain. And coals burn. The operation, codename Operation Firelight, began with simultaneous strikes on 3 alien control towers. The towers regulated the gravitational mesh the Virelli had cast over Earth, preventing human ships from leaving or even flying effectively in the upper atmosphere. Each tower was a monolith of black alloy, humming with alien circuitry and guarded by biomechanical drones that drifted in silence, each with eyes like burning suns. Strike Team Echo 1 targeted the tower near Johannesburg. Their path ran through the shattered remains of the city, where vines and ash shared space with Virelli fungal growths. Drone scouts, once African schoolchildren now grown into warriors, led the way. Private Harris, a demolitions expert, knelt near a ruptured wall, adjusting the warhead that would deliver a payload strong enough to destabilize the tower's base. 30 seconds, he whispered. Hope these bastards remember pain. From the shadows, the Virelli emerged, not with roars, but with the pulsing hum of shifting armor. Their weapons weren't guns but appendages. Organic tendrils that could cut through steel. The Earth was no longer silent. What the Tsar had scorched with their weapons, humanity rebuilt with their will. The once cracked roads of cities now hummed with makeshift solar grids and rail systems. The skies once patrolled by alien warcraft now glimmered with human-made satellites and repurposed alien tech. But humanity wasn't just rebuilding. They were becoming something more. The Resistance, once a scattered collection of fighters and tinkerers, had grown into a force that spanned continents. Underneath the Arctic ice, inside dormant volcanoes, and deep within Earth's crust, the reborn species forged its arsenal. The Vanguard Corps, now a symbol across the stars, recruited the brightest minds and the fiercest warriors. Their goal was no longer survival. It was justice. Captain Alina stood on the bridge of the Iron Dawn, a ship crafted from the bones of Tsar cruisers and powered by Earth's newly harnessed quantum cores. In front of her, stars wheeled silently, but beyond them lay vengeance and salvation. We strike the Nexus, she said, her voice steady. Not just a base. The heart of their empire. The crew didn't cheer. They simply nodded. They understood what was at stake. Back on Earth, the world prepared. No longer passive victims, children were trained in simulators, engineers refined energy weapons, and leaders coordinated with lunar outposts. The message was clear: never again would humanity be prey. In orbit, Earth's defense satellites lit up, not in panic, but in signal. A ripple of light passed through the stars as allied species began to answer humanity's call. Some came for honor, others for debt, and a few out of fear of what humanity had become. The attack on the Tsar Nexus was swift and brutal. Not because humanity had better firepower, they didn't. But because they had something far more dangerous. Conviction. Where the Tsar had order, the humans had chaos. Where the Tsar obeyed, humans adapted. On every front, from asteroid belts to starlit oceans, Earth's soldiers turned their rage into strategy. The Tsar, arrogant in their superiority, were unprepared for the fury of a species that had been burned and rebuilt in fire. In the final push, as the Iron Dawn crashed through the Nexus Gate, Captain Alina led the charge. Around her, explosions rippled in slow light, ships peeled apart, and silence roared through space. She reached the Nexus core. There, before the pulsing brain of the Tsar Empire, she uttered the final words of a dying past. This is for the forgotten. For the ruined. For the children who never grew old. And she pressed the trigger. A wave of light, not destructive, but cleansing, spread from the core. Not all Tsar died. Some fled. Some knelt. Some changed. Back on Earth, when the light reached home, people emerged from bunkers not to ruins, but to sunrise. Not silence. But singing. From the ashes of every city, a voice rose, of hope, of memory, of warning. And the stars.